Hello. Welcome to episode 79 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. And I guess I'm being super enthusiastic, Jason, right now, and I'm doing this with my arms to indicate my enthusiasm for whatever reason. Listen, we all have challenges and opportunities in life. And And this is self-evident when we look at our lives, our own lives, but we so often get to feeling isolated, like no one else has challenges and things are going great for everyone and they're clicking their fingers like this um and it is not a thing of I finally learned it's not a thing of comparing my challenges to yours or the next person. It's the question is how do we do the best with the challenges we have and make them into opportunities and persevere towards our goals and dreams. I mention this because my guest today is I've known her since college, and she's just a guru of going for what she wants in life. So with that, I always say without further ado, so I'll say it again. Without further ado,
today's guest, Vicki Stewart.
let me tell you a bit about Vicki. Vicki Stewart is the executive director of the Business Resource Network in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Vicki has a BA in religion with a minor in psychology from Augustana University in Sioux Falls, same school I went to. Of course, back when we went, it was Augustana College. Since then, they've gotten all university, but it's still the same school. She has worked in the field of disabilities for 30 years, striving for full inclusion of people with disabilities in employment, community living, in all aspects of society. Vicki was born with the disease Osteogenesis Imperfecta and uses a wheelchair for mobility. Vicki is a member of the South Dakota RehabACTion, the Sioux Empire Society for Human Resource Management, the Sioux Falls Development Foundation's Recruitment Council. Have to catch my breath. She's on lots of boards. Sioux Falls Downtown Rotary in the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. I guess those on boards, but she's a member of a lot of organizations. Now to the board. She serves on the Pathways to Inclusive and Equitable Workplaces Board, the Advisory Committee for Business Administration and Entrepreneurship at Southeast Technical College, the USD Health Sciences Advisory Board, the State Board of Vocational Rehabilitation, and the South Dakota Parent Connection Board. In addition, she is a WINDMILLS, changing the perception of ability certified trainer. Okay, got through it. And here's Vicky Stewart. Yay, welcome, Vicky.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for that great introduction.
Thanks so much for being here. I have to say I'm proud of myself for getting through all the organizations and boards you're on there. That's amazing. What inspires you to be so involved in the community and in the state?
I just really feel like there are a lot of great organizations and nonprofits here in Sioux Falls. And if I can contribute with my skills and abilities, I think it's really important to share gifts with others and to contribute as much as you can. And I feel that having a representative from the disability community is important because I don't always see that on boards. And I think we have something special to offer and some maybe different insights than others might have.
Well, thank you for all you do. What? And I'm asking this question for me. What would you say to someone who says he doesn't have enough expertise to be on a board? What would you say to people who look at themselves and make excuses not to be on boards?
Well, I think everybody has skills and abilities to offer, and it's just a matter of starting to share, and then you get more comfortable. So I think we're all experts in certain areas based on our experiences, and no one of us has the same experience as another person. So we're all experts in a certain way.
That's inspiring, and it's true. Thanks for reminding us of that. Now we're going to do a little Back to the Future thing here and have a little time travel during this conversation. Going back in time, you were born.
Right. I came into this world, and at about 3 weeks old, my mom was giving me a bath, and she heard something snap. She thought it was maybe the pin on my diaper, but when I wouldn't stop crying, she decided to take me into the doctor. And there they discovered that I had a broken arm, and they falsely accused my mom of child abuse, thinking she had broken my arm on purpose, which of course was not true. But very traumatic for her.
Oh my God.
Definitely. But after further examination, they saw bluish tint in the whites of my eyes. And that was a sign that I had osteogenesis imperfecta. And a lot of times they refer to it as brittle bone disease, especially back then. So I was diagnosed at a very young age.
So the diagnosis came, and then what happened next?
Well, I'm sure it was very scary for my parents. They just sent me back home, not really knowing what to expect. They knew that I had to be extra careful. They had to be extra careful. They had to teach my brothers and sisters to be extra careful around me. So they just did the best they could. I had several breaks when I was younger. And I often was in a cast or in traction, recuperating at home, in the hospital. A lot of times I'd just camp out on our couch at our home, and I'd watch lots of TV, listen to lots of music. Thank goodness I had a big family, so they helped keep me entertained. But yeah, pretty isolated. You know, I was at home a lot of the time. So
could you go to school then, or did you somehow study from home?
I was fortunate enough to go to a school out in the country. 4 towns went together to this school, and it was built in the early 70s, I believe, early to mid 70s. So it was all one level. So I was fortunate enough to attend public school there. Of course, the bus wasn't wheelchair accessible, so my mom would drive me to school and pick me up every day. And as I got older, my brothers or sisters would take me to school. And then once I got into high school, my friends were old enough to drive and they would take me and pick me up from school again, too. But there were times when I'd have a break and I'd have to recover at home and wouldn't be able to go to school. So I had an aunt actually who had a teaching background. So she was kind of my tutor. She'd get my
Mm.
homework assignments from school and spend time with me after school, and make sure that I got my lessons and kept up. So I'm very fortunate that I wasn't held back because of that. We were still able to provide the education at home.
Did your aunt live in the same town?
Not the same town, but real close by in a small town. So yeah, probably
Oh,
about 10 minutes away. So it was really convenient.
so challenges happen. Like at 3 weeks old, your parents got this news, and you at 3 weeks old, you had to feel the pain of your first break, and big challenge. But then there were like lucky opportunities too. That that you're from a small town, but the school was all on one level. That's really amazing. And then that your aunt had a teaching background and she lived close by and she was willing to to work with you, and then that you had brothers and sisters who were willing to keep you entertained. And
Yeah, I was very fortunate to have a very supportive family, supportive parents, and that made a world of difference for me.
you were mentioning that that some people from your town, it became, they just knew you as Vicky, and and you found out much later that some of them didn't have any idea what you about the OI till a long time later, huh?
Right. Yeah. People didn't really ask me about my disability. And if they didn't ask, I didn't share, I guess. Um, I know some of my friends I heard later thought that I was going to die by the time I was 21, that I was going
Mm.
to have a shorter lifespan. Um, there were some rumors that I had been run over as a child, and that's why I was using a wheelchair. So all kinds of different stories floating around about why I was using a wheelchair, or what my disability was. So
It's so and this gets to, before that, Daryl, one of my great friends from Texas, says hi.
nice. Hi, Daryl.
And this gets to like thanks for being on, Daryl. And this gets to one big thing I think that all of us struggle with at times. I know I do. It's so easy to make assumptions about other people's situation instead of asking questions.
Right. And to me now, I am feel it's very important for people to ask those questions, especially kids. Like, when I'm at Target or something like that, and there's maybe a family in front of me checking out, and one of the kids says, "Why are you in that thing?" Or "Why can't you walk?" And then sometimes the parents grab them and say, "Don't ask that," or "Don't stare at her." Where I think it's important for the kids to ask those questions. Otherwise, I'm afraid they learn to be afraid of people with disabilities. And I don't want that. I want to be open and honest. And kids are curious. So if they have those questions, I encourage them to ask those questions.
How would you explain, like, to a 7-year-old who asked you at Target?
Well, sometimes I've just said, my legs don't work the same way as you, so I'm not strong enough to walk. So that's why I have to use my chair. It helps me get around.
And with that simple explanation, they suddenly know.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Her legs don't work like mine."
What about the other way as adults? What do you think if we see someone who experiences a disability of some type? What like, how do we broach the subject, or do we broach the subject?
I would say just get to know the person first. Maybe not focus on their disability right away, but definitely don't let that stop you from reaching out to a person with a disability. Oftentimes, we feel pretty isolated or ignored. So, if you run across a person with a disability, I say reach out to them just like you would anyone else. And maybe as you get to know them, that will come up and you'll have the opportunity to ask the questions that you have. And again, I don't get offended when adults ask me questions either, unless they're, very personal or I feel they don't know me very well to be asking that question. Um, but again, I'd rather have facts rather than rumors or assumptions floating around that aren't true.
This brings up a great point of having a disability, like I'm not just a speech impediment and the coordination differences. You are not just your OI. We have we have whole lives, and so like with anyone you can, like, I could ask you about living in a small town if I knew you grew up in a small town. Like if I met you just now, it might become apparent that we both went to the same college, and so we could talk about teachers.
Exactly. A lot of times I think people have more in common than they realize. Even if one has a disability and not the other, there's still always some connection or commonality that we have.
What's a good beginning beginning question when we're meeting people? Well, I guess not just people with disabilities, but people in general.
Well, the first or question that usually comes up is, "What do you do?" And that just seems to be a standard question, which maybe isn't always fair because not everyone is employed. But that is typically the question that I ask first, I guess, when I meet someone new. So, what do you do?
Hmm. And that gives a whole huge area of stuff to talk about from the answer.
Right, exactly.
So how does the conversation we're having so far tie in with what you do, Vicky?
Oh, that's a good
Thanks
question.
thanks for setting me up for.
Well, with Business Resource Network, we're a nonprofit and we provide businesses with education and resources and awareness to promote the successful employment of people with disabilities. So, one of the trainings that I provide is disability etiquette and communicating with people with disabilities. Because, again, I think there's a lot of false assumptions or attitudinal barriers that exist. So, if I can go into a business and make them more comfortable around people with disabilities. I think that's really important. And the more comfortable people become, the more they're likely to recruit people with disabilities. They're more, it's easier for them to retain their employees with disabilities. So I think it just puts everyone at ease when we can talk about those things openly.
What are some common questions that businesses would have in a training, or
Yeah.
common concerns?
Okay. Well, I think one of the major concerns is the cost of providing accommodations for employees with disabilities. Some businesses feel like they're going to have to pay a lot of money to provide accommodations, and that's really just not the case. Most accommodations don't cost anything, and if there is a cost, they're typically $500 or under. So it doesn't need to be a concern for businesses. And a lot of times, people with disabilities bring their own accommodations to the job. For instance, when I was working at a nonprofit, part of the job requirement was to travel throughout South Dakota. And we had a work vehicle, but of course, it wasn't wheelchair accessible. It wasn't adaptive for me to drive. So I had a spare set of hand controls at home. So I offered to donate them to be installed in the work vehicle. And then my workplace paid for the installation of the hand controls. So it was a nice split. And I took a little bit of the burden from the business. They didn't have to pay as much to provide that accommodation, and I was able to use the hand controls that I already had. So I brought my accommodation to the job.
This is such a I get excited about this point. If you can tell, I'm shaking, but it's like a relationship, like a reciprocal relationship, like the organization put something in, and you put something in, and and it, and you both created something together. Instead of, so often I feel that the idea of allowing people with disabilities is that they just have to be given to, and that's, and it can be more of a reciprocal relationship. Could you say more about that?
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you there, Jason. I always say, I think a lot of people with disabilities feel like they take all the time and they don't have the opportunity to give back. And that's why I think employment is so necessary for people with disabilities, because we all have gifts, we all have skills, we all have abilities, and we don't want those to go wasted. We can,
Mm.
share those with others in our community, within our businesses. It's not all about our limitations and disabilities. We all have skills and abilities too.
If a person with a disability came to you and and said, "Vicky, I don't really have any skills. I have this going on and this going on," what would you? How would you talk to them to help them discover what the skills are?
Sure. I think it's, about having open conversations again. I would try to get to know them better, find out what they're interested in. Maybe they do some volunteer work, maybe they have hobbies, and all of those things might lead us to figure out what their skills and abilities are. And
Mm.
to, share that it's really important to share those with others too. You have a gift and you have an ability and you might not even know about it, but if we dig deep enough, we'll find it.
Mm. If we dig deep enough, we'll find it. I love that determination.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too for employers and employees to have that back and forth conversation and communication, because even with accommodations, it's not always one and done. That a
Mm,
business provides a certain thing and then that's all they'll ever have to do. There are certain disabilities like MS, for instance, or Parkinson's, where things might change as a
mm,
person gets older and their accommodation needs might change as well. But if you're comfortable with your employer and able to share that and be open, it just makes things easier for everyone and you can be a better employee.
mm, mm. Um, I have another question, but Dale says it's so nice what you do. Since this is Autism Awareness Month, have you have you have you tried and since it's Autism Awareness Month, could you speak a little bit to what people who experience autism have to offer the workforce?
Sure.
I know it's a broad question,
Yeah, I
but
can give some particular examples.
yeah.
Business Resource Network is typically involved in our Lighting the Way Autism Conference every year. So typically, I'll bring a panel together. So employees with autism and maybe their supervisor, their manager, or their HR person. And we have a conversation. It's one of the breakout sessions offered at the conference. And so it's a great way to show people that people with autism hold various jobs. And again, they have skills and abilities and flourish in the workplace. So there's a place for everyone. And another example, I worked with a business in town who hired their first employee with autism, and they were kind of struggling communicating with that person. And so I came and spoke to the employees there, and we just I gave an overview of what autism is and how everyone is different with autism.
Mm,
And we talked a little bit about their circumstances, and I shared with them some tips on communicating with him. And I just really encouraged them to get to know him better and ask him what accommodations, how is it best for him to communicate with them and respect that. So yeah, and I have another gentleman that I met with autism. He was diagnosed as an adult and kind of struggled throughout his life, wondering, why am I different? What's going
oh
on
wow.
here? And so when he was finally diagnosed, the world just kind of came together for him. And I've had him speak at some of my events too. And he's amazing. I mean,
Wow.
yeah. And he's had very professional jobs in his lifetime, but he said he always struggled to keep those jobs because he wasn't sure about his autism and what accommodations really would help him. Where now he's learning all of that and kind of flourishing. So those are great stories to hear.
Yeah. If someone one of the accommodations a person might need in a workplace is like, what do they call them, like a job coach?
Yes, right. Some people need a job coach, particularly maybe when they're learning a new job. So there are state agencies such as Vocational Rehabilitation who can provide the job coaches to follow side by side with the new employee and kind of just go through the on the job training with them, make sure that they're comfortable, make sure if there are accommodations that they are provided through the employer. And so it's great to have that resource for people.
So does the employer have to pay the job coach too?
No, there's no cost to having the job coach. That's a part of the services through the state.
Would there ever be a situation where an employee has an ongoing job coach?
Typically not. Typically, the goal is to maybe start out with more hours and then kind of just wean down as the person gets more comfortable in their position. So typically not. It's typically for a temporary basis, I would say.
Employee turnover is like a huge deal right now, obviously. I've heard that sometimes people with who experience disabilities are very loyal employees and stay with the company longer than other employees might. Is that true? And
Sometimes that is the case, especially if a person's really struggled to find employment. Once they secure a job, they want to stay there, and be the best employee they can be. But I think kind of a barrier to some people with disabilities is whether they are comfortable disclosing their disabilities. We all know that there are invisible or hidden disabilities. So, mine is very obvious, of course. I use a wheelchair. So, employers know that I have a disability. But there might be people with autism or mental illness or even deafness who aren't comfortable in the workplace and they're afraid to disclose their disability because they're afraid of getting fired because of that. And they're, appreciative of having a job and they don't want to mess that up. So it's really important to have an inclusive work culture where people with disabilities are comfortable sharing about their disability. And if they're comfortable in disclosing their disability, they're also able to ask for accommodations they might need. Without those accommodations, sometimes people don't succeed on the job. So it's really important to be open and honest and have that open communication with their employer.
so how does an employer encourage that level of communication and of honesty? Because I can definitely see not wanting to reveal something that I think might get me fired if I want the job.
Right. And, it's really not legal for employers to ask specifically, do you have a disability? So I would say, again, it's just about having that open communication and making the person feel accepted and included in all aspects of the job. Then they will be more likely to share that information with their employer.
So the employer can create a safe environment, and then the employee it is just more free to step up and talk about what they're dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah. The more comfortable they are, the more likely they're going to share and ask for the accommodations they need.
And on the other side again, um, what would you say to someone with a hidden disability who's applying for a new job and like, I want to put my best foot forward, Vicky. I don't want to talk about what I have going on.
And I feel it's a very individualized decision. So I'm not going to tell a person you have to disclose your disability because I realize that's not something that everyone wants to do. But I think it's important to let that person know that if there are issues that come up on the job, if they're struggling to perform their work tasks, things like that, that they might want to really consider if their disability is affecting their work. And if so, are there accommodations that they can maybe request that will help them to perform their job better? And just to be aware that, if you do share about your disability, it will make it easier to get those accommodations.
So it's not just about sharing the thing that someone might feel ashamed of what or whatever the feeling is. There's also the positive of getting the accommodations and then having a chance to really be successful on the job.
Right. And I always say, my disability is a part of who I am, but it's not all that I am. So no
Wow.
matter if you have a hidden disability or not, you still have those gifts and abilities.
Speaking of hidden, I'm tapping my feet. Exciting question came to me. So we've had shaking so far today and tapping my feet. So in high school, you said before we got on that you didn't want to know about 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 your pants off of your books and stuff, and you really didn't want to know. You were kind of in denial. How did you go from being that Vicky who was I'm not going to deal with this to being where you are today, being a strong advocate for the best in people and inclusion? I mean, that's like going from one end of the earth to the other. How does that happen?
Well, I really think that having a disability is a lot like the grief cycle. I feel that I went through all of those stages. When I was
Mm,
younger, um, I was in the bargaining stage. I always felt like I had to bargain with God. Like if I did
mm,
something wrong, then I was going to break my arm, like I would be punished. So I
mm,
kind of went through that bargaining phase with God
mm,
when I was younger. And then as I got into high school and was more active, I didn't break as often in high school. I got to be more involved in extracurricular activities, made new friends, and life was good. So I didn't want to deal with my disability. I was in denial at that
mm,
point.
mm,
Um, I would say when I was in college, I probably hit my depressed stage. Um, College was a whole new world for me. All, people that didn't know me, I didn't know them. My first time away from my family and friends that I had grown up with. So college was definitely challenging for me. And I would say that was probably the stage of grief when I was in depression. And then you get to acceptance. And I think you continually go through that process as a person
mm.
with a disability. But the more I learned about myself and the more that I was intrigued to learn about my disability, the more comfortable I was in my own skin. And I started to really see that, again, I wasn't just my disability. So the more I learned about myself, the better things got. And I realized that um, just accepting the disability was a huge, huge step to living a fuller life.
Was there like a sudden turning point from depression to acceptance that you can identify?
Yes. I felt very isolated in college. The only accessible dorm was for freshmen. I mean, for juniors and seniors. So all my freshman classmates were at the dorm at the other end of campus.
Oh my god!
And a lot of the
Oh my
campus wasn't
god!
accessible at that time,
Oh
wheelchair accessible. So there were a
god!
lot of challenges, and I felt very isolated. I just didn't feel like I was meeting people. I didn't have friends, and I'm a very social person and always had friends in high school and things. So that was when I really went through depression. But I went home Christmas break my freshman year, and I told my dad I was going to quit college. I said it was just too tough. And he said, Vicky, give it one more semester. I have a feeling things are going to improve. So I did. And we went on a band trip. I was in the Augustana band, and we
Mm,
went on a trip to Colorado. And that forced me to get out there, to share about my disability, to reach out and make friends. And that was a turning point for me. I just really felt like Augustana was home after traveling during that week in J term. It just made all the difference. And I felt like people accepted me for who I was, where I wasn't sure about that prior to the trip.
So it was a trip to Colorado.
Yep. We played a lot of concert in churches and different places along the way. But, they had to load my wheelchair, carry me on the bus because it wasn't wheelchair accessible. So we just all learned to work together and learn to share.
Feet tapping again. So often when at least I think to make a difference in someone's life, it has to be like something huge, and it's going to take hours. But your dad really simply made a difference in your life by saying, "Hey, Vicky, please just give it one more semester."
Yeah.
And then think about all the people on that trip, all your fellow students just made a difference by being friendly and being nice and helping you when you needed help. And
Right. I felt like it was an inclusive environment. I mean, I had to share a room with others just like the rest of the band members did, and it was great. People accepted me for who I was, chair or not.
and and I love how kindness ripples out, because your dad's kindness, the kindness of you towards the people on the band trip, that kindness back to you, that's all rippled out into. And now today you're helping so many people to see the best in themselves and to really be included in meaningful work.
Right.
So it just keeps going.
It does. Yep.
Mm. You also mentioned before we got on that you had one friend in college who really inspired you.
Yeah, and she probably doesn't even know she did. So maybe she'll listen to this. And when I was at Augustana, that's kind of also when I started to want to learn more about my disability and make changes for the better. Because campus wasn't all that accessible, other students and myself formed a group called Augie Access, and we were more or
Mm,
less a support advocacy
mm,
group. So it was for students going to college, and we would do a lot of awareness raising. Like I remember we would have a wheelchair obstacle course set out in front of the cafeteria. And so we'd encourage people to go through it. So they'd actually sit in a wheelchair and try to push an elevator button, push themselves up a ramp. And it was just a great way for people to see what it might be like to have a disability. And there was a gal that was a little bit older than me who also was going to college at the same time. She used a wheelchair, and she just was a really good mentor to me. She had done more advocacy work herself, and so just kind of taught me the ropes, I guess. And that's when I really felt like what we can do together as a group can really make a large impact on the whole campus.
do you recall? Did she say any specific things that have stuck with you?
I can't think of anything in particular, but I do remember she was just so kind. Like, she wasn't afraid to say things the way they are,
Mm.
and to make change, but she did it in such a positive and kind way. I think that's what influenced me the most, because sometimes we can let our anger get control of us when something's not right, when something's not accessible. We get angry about that. And if we let it out in the wrong way or blame other people, I think that just defeats the purpose. So she really taught me to advocate in a kind way and still get things accomplished.
You're making this so easy for me. Thank you, Vicki.
Oh, good. Well, you're making it easy for me too.
So speaking of advocating in a kind way, say a new restaurant opens in town, and you're all excited to go to the restaurant, and you get there, and you notice it's not wheelchair accessible. Like how will you advocate in a kind way in that circumstance?
Well, that actually happened to me. I went to a new restaurant. This was several years ago, but I could access the building. I got in fine, but I realized it was all counter seating or the high tables. There weren't
Oh,
any wheelchair accessible tables.
oh,
So I approached the host right away and said, the tall tables just don't work for people in
hmm,
wheelchairs. Do you have another option? And she said, as a matter of fact, we have two tables that actually we can lower to wheelchair height. So they did. So that was a great fix. But if I wouldn't have asked in a nice way and would have just assumed that they weren't accessible and, got angry about it, that wouldn't have solved anything. But because I asked, I found out they were accessible. So it's just having that open communication. Um, and that's a real issue actually with a lot of restaurants in our community is that they have so many tall tables. And
hmm,
if you're waiting for one or two tables, you might have a really long wait. So
hmm,
I have worked with another restaurant that said just call ahead and then we'll reserve
hmm,
one of the lower tables for you because we know you
hmm.
use a wheelchair. So I think just having conversations like that with businesses can really help.
And the other option is you could have gone into the restaurant you were talking about and seen all the tables were high and just huffed out and told all your friends they're not wheelchair accessible. This is horrible. Don't go there. And and you would have missed out on the restaurant, and they would have missed out on a great customer too. So just you were kind and you got the food and they got the customer.
Yep, yep. It never hurts to ask. That's for
Mm,
sure.
mm. So um. This is kind of the awkward pause. So, like sometimes I get so many ideas. In fact, I don't know if I have an idea of a question to ask at the moment. So maybe it's just coming coming up with. So oh yeah, okay. So if someone who was experiencing a disability came to you in that real depressed place where you were in college or at the beginning of college, how would you direct them?
Well, I think it's so important to reach out and get the help that you need, whether that be a counselor or talking to a family member that you're comfortable with, reaching out to friends, um, finding a support group. It's just, there are so many resources out there, but you have to be willing to reach out to those resources. But I think that's so, so important because the more we isolate, the more depressed we get. So if we can share our experiences with others, I think there's a lot of help out there.
in life can get better. You were saying how many breaks do you estimate you had as a kid?
Probably 35 to 40. That's a
Oh,
real rough guess, but yeah,
35 to 40. I just wince when I hear you say that. Oh, then you mentioned in high school like the breaks became less common.
right, right. And that's kind of a common trend with the type of OI that I have, that once a person reaches puberty, they usually have less breaks. So I've been very fortunate to go through most of my 20s, 30s, 40s with very, very few breaks. And that's allowed me to live a very different life than what I did when I was younger. And I feel that that really has influenced me and has made me more appreciative of the
Mm,
times now that I can do more things, that I can be out and about, that I'm not stuck at home with a broken bone. And I
mm,
want to take advantage of every opportunity that I have to live life to the fullest while I have that chance. Um, there's not a lot of research as to what's going to happen to a person in OI as they get older again. It's probably likely that I'll start breaking more again as I get older because all of our bones get weaker as we get older.
mm,
So, not quite sure what to anticipate in the future, but that's why it's important to live every moment.
mm. Powerful. When Flipson, who you actually were gracious enough to take his spot. He's going into surgery soon, and so couldn't be on. He so the story is he thought the surgery was scheduled for this week, for Monday, and so he's like, Jason, I won't be ready by Wednesday. And then he texted me a little while later and said they changed the surgery to a few weeks from now. So
Oh gosh.
so so but so Ryan will be back back on in July.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to that.
Ryan and Angela, the great couple, and Angela says, and as women, we need to take care of our bones. I would say as men too, men do too, but yeah, both men and women do.
Yep.
Women and men.
Yep. And I do try to be as proactive as possible. I do a lot of weight bearing exercises in the pool and lift weights and go on walks in my chair. All of those things increase my muscle mass, therefore increasing my bone mass and protecting my bones more. So I try to be as healthy as I can.
Yeah. So you have a chair wheel, right? You don't have or do you have a electric chair?
Nope, I just have the manual wheelchair because I feel like exercise is really important for me. Um, to stay active, I think, is very beneficial. So I prefer to push my own wheelchair.
Your arms must be very strong.
Yeah, don't challenge me to an arm wrestling contest, Jason.
I'll keep that in mind. Oh, could you talk about the video you were just in? The that
Oh,
has the great slogan. Oh, yeah, I am where?
yes, yes. I have a good friend who just started a nonprofit called Rare by Design. So when it was rare disease awareness, she asked some of us to be a part of her video. And it says, because I because I'm rare, I care, or something like that. So we just did short video snippets to kind of raise awareness about rare diseases.
I thought it was a very effective video. I liked watching it.
Thanks.
So in my work, I talk a lot about the power of doing our imperfect best, and what that means to me is we have a vision of the best we want our lives to be, and then when imperfections come up, we learn from them and keep going towards the best we envision. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
Well, I don't think any of us are perfect or do things correctly all the time. So I think as long as we continue to strive to be our best, whatever that is, and it looks different for everybody, to not let our imperfections or those mistakes stop us in our tracks, but to keep persevering. And like you said, to learn from those mistakes or imperfections. There's something to learn in everything that happens to us, I believe. And sometimes you really have to look to see what that is. But I really, truly believe we can learn from all of our experiences.
Well, I like that a lot. What's up next for you? What's the next big thing you want to accomplish or create?
Oh boy. Well, we just did strategic planning with Business Resource Network. So we have some exciting things coming around the bend, trying some new creative, innovative ideas, maybe even a name change. We're not sure. So that's exciting to have some new things. Continuing to travel. I love to travel. So we hope to take a couple of driving trips this summer, visit family and friends. Always look forward to that. And my main goal really is always to just make our society more inclusive to everyone, whether we have a disability or not. So whether that be doing it in small ways or big ways, I'm going to continue my efforts in that arena.
Thanks. What you do is so important. I mean, for everyone, we all benefit the more each of us feels included and feels able to offer our gifts. And so thanks for what you do.
Thanks, Jason. I love what I do, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Oh, one more, two more quick things. When we met, it was when I back at Augie, and you weren't married, but you recently got married. What do you love about married life?
Oh gosh, that really you get to share your life with your best friend. We have so much in common, and it's just great to hang out together, whether we're going for a walk or traveling or just having a dinner together. It's just great to be able to have that companionship.
And if someone wants to get a hold of you and learn more about the Business Resource Network.
Sure, yeah, you can always give me a call. Can I share the number?
Oh, do you want to share the number and make it public?
Sure.
Okay, what the heck?
Or we could just put the website on there. People can surely contact me through our website as well.
So either way, which one would you like?
Let's do the website.
Okay. Good. And what is it?
It's www.sfbrn.org. www.sfbrn, Sioux Falls Business Resource Network.org.
It would have been a long name if you hadn't abbreviated that.
Exactly.
So like that.
Perfect. Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being on, Vicky, and coming on at short notice, and thanks for the impact you've had on my life and the impact you have on so many people's lives.
Thank you for having me, Jason. I always enjoy our conversations, and you've been an inspiration to me, and I think you're doing great work. So I hope to promote you and your work in any way that I can. So thanks for having me on.
Good. You're welcome. Have a great day. Oh, I love doing this podcast. And as always, I don't always say this, so it's not as always, but I encourage you to ask the people around you quick questions about what you don't know about them. I think sometimes we fall in the trap of like we've known someone for a while, so we think we know everything about them. We don't. There's always things we can ask each other. So that's your assignment if you choose to accept it. And I'll have another amazing guest next week. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.